All right, we are rolling. Michelle Davies, welcome to the Terrain Theory Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited.
We're excited too. Michelle, to kick things off, can you tell us what is osteopathy to the listener who may know nothing about it?
So, osteopathy is a healing art, it's a science, and it's a philosophy. And it's been around since 1874, which is really before modern pharmaceutical medicine. And as osteopaths believe that the body has an ability to heal itself. So if you're practicing osteopathy and osteopathy techniques, then you're working with the body to self-heal and self-repair. So we have a number of principles or foundations that we work from. And some of these include that structure governs function, that the rule of the artery is supreme, that the body will heal itself, and then find it, fix it, and leave it alone. And so we encourage the body to self-repair and self-heal because all of us were born with that ability. And the founder of osteopathy in 1874, he actually said that osteopathy is the greatest gift to humanity. And he would say that the author of osteopathy is God. So we have actually a very spiritual side to osteopathy, but not everybody practices that way, and largely to do with the regulation of osteopaths. And so the scope of osteopaths gets limited really by the regulator. But pretty much that's what osteopathy is. It's just a natural form of healing. We treat everything from head to toe. So we are able to access the body's healing ability, and we work really with any symptom or condition because we don't really treat a particular condition as such, because we're just looking at the body and we're looking for any misalignments, restrictions, imbalances, where there isn't flow, where there isn't drainage. So then we use our hands, and then we allow the body to correct itself by applying our hands in a certain way, and we just encourage that the body will then do its self healing and repairing because we're able to remove the blockages or help with realignment. But it's the entire body, so the entire system. Some osteopaths would work internally, and some will work with the organs of the body. There's a big difference with the way that osteopaths practice, and you probably wouldn't find two that are the same. So if osteopathy hasn't worked for you with one practitioner, it actually makes sense to find another practitioner because they would be entirely different. And that's some part of it's through training, but also part of that is also through your own experiences and how you decide to work, because you're taught a lot of techniques on the 4-year degree course. When you graduate, it's really up to you what techniques that you use. And so you find your own path.
I think of this idea around maintaining the body or correcting the structure of the body similar to, and Mike and I have used this analogy a lot, taking the car to a mechanic. And if the car isn't structurally sound or doesn't go in for routine maintenance, it's not going to work optimally. And over time, it's going to break down and just and fail to operate entirely. And my question around seeing an osteopath, if you have a given condition, and considering that an osteopath isn't necessarily addressing the condition itself, but just optimizing the body to address the condition and heal from it, would one who is perhaps suffering symptoms or a condition who goes to an osteopath expect that within one session they're going to see dramatic change? Or is it something that they need to be ready to commit over a longer period of time? And if so, why is that?
So patients respond differently. So you wouldn't be able to say exactly how many sessions someone might need. But for myself, I have an average number of treatments. So the average number of treatments would be between 2 and 3. And sometimes one is enough, and just miracles happen. And it's plenty of times where one treatment has actually created a miraculous result, and the patient doesn't need to return. And then other patients, they actually have relapses after treatment, which means then that you need to continue to support the body in its healing journey because life has got in the way, or relationships, stress, maybe they've had surgery, maybe they're taking different medications, maybe they're not eating that great and they've got intolerances, maybe they've had an injury or an insult. And so, because those things then happen, it may cause the body then to need actually more support in its journey of healing. So that's why then it would vary. If you've got someone who's actually doing a really good job at looking after themselves and they are balanced within all four quadrants of life, which is physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, then generally those patients need less treatment because they're already looking after themselves in a very holistic way. But I've been surprised on other occasions where someone hasn't been looking after themselves that great, and one treatment is like magic, and then
Mm.
it's hard to understand then why one person could get away with one, and then another patient would actually need three or four. But I would say a significant change is to be expected within, I would say, 2 to 3 treatments, because you are stimulating the body to heal itself, and we have got that natural ability. But if you support your body as much as you can with the right conditions, like making sure that you sleep well, that you're eating well, exercising, avoiding certain things that would make your condition worse, and also just, yeah, things like positive mental attitude and what your beliefs are. So it can be complex, and we have to take everything into account really when we're trying to help someone manage their own health.
And again, that makes a lot of sense. If we return to the analogy of a car and maintaining a car, if you go to the mechanic to get things addressed, but then you put improper fuel into it, or you redline the car, you driving over potholes all the time, very quickly
Yeah.
you're going to need that assistance again to get the car corrected. But if you drive it appropriately, give it what it needs, it's yeah, that's all just common sense. I want to return to the first thing you said about osteopathy, meaning structure governs function. And when you talk about structure and alignment of the body, can you go a little deeper? Is this the skeletal system? Is it like balance of the organs? And when you say removing blockages, are you talking like the lymph and the drainage? Like, let's go a little deeper here.
So let's take, for example, the structure of the brain and the lymphatic system, and then the symptoms of like anxiety and depression. So, if the brain is not functioning optimally, which means the lymphatic system isn't functioning, you're not getting flow of the cerebrospinal fluid around the brain. That then means that the brain, because it's an organ, it will start to release toxins, which is normal. But the lymphatic system is what takes the toxins away from the brain and takes them back into the blood system. And that way it detoxes. Now, if there's something wrong with that structure, for example, so a trauma, which actually can be birth, or it could be a head injury, um, then that will disrupt the structure of the brain and the system. And then symptoms such as anxiety, depression, and thoughts of suicide and huge fatigue could come about as a result of the structure not being correct. So, what you were saying earlier about the car engine, I also use that as an analogy because it's like the amber light on the car engine. If there are symptoms, they are there for a reason. Your body is amazing at giving you the signs, and most people ignore the signs. But if you do look out for a symptom, you know then that there's something wrong with the structure of your body somewhere.
Mm. When a patient or someone you're working with comes into you with a set of symptoms, can you, just by those symptoms, have an idea as to what structurally might be wrong with the body? So you can kind of laser focus on that, or do you have to go through like a comprehensive evaluation, like with your hands, to sort of determine that? How does that process work?
So the first thing would be the medical questionnaire. So before I work with someone, I've already received their medical history, which is in great detail. So I've already got some idea from the questionnaire. And then it's examination techniques. So sometimes it would be a case of needing to actually do a neurological examination. For example, taking reflexes and checking the power and the strength. It could be taking blood pressure. So sometimes there is that element of needing to do some medical tests to help with the diagnosis before you can start treating. But also, you want to make sure that the patient is safe for treatment and they're going to be a good patient for you to actually help resolve, because sometimes it's not a case for someone like myself to treat that person, because actually they actually need to be seen by the medical system. But that could be something that's serious that we would recognize that within the questionnaire and also within the examination itself. And then, yes, it's hands-on examining. And then as soon as my hands are in contact with the patient, I know what's wrong probably within minutes, because I can very quickly feel some part of the body. And I already know, because of the feeling that we get with taught palpation, taught how to feel over the 4 years training. And then with all the years experience, particularly that I've got 27 years experience in private practice, it's very easy then to put my hands on someone and just be able to feel what's wrong with them and where the problem is. If we think about maybe the example of like period pain, that could be that there's a lot of congestion within the lumbar spine. So that you could have the facet joints inflamed from a previous sprain to the lower back, but then that's causing a lot of inflammation, which is sitting there all the time, 24/7. There could also be an issue around the vagus nerve at the top of the neck. That could be from a previous repetitive strain injury or a trauma. So then you've got the vagus nerve aggravating, because the vagus nerve supplies all of the organs. And then you've got the lumbar spine contributing, because you've got this already this pressure in the area with this inflammation in the lower back, which then also compromises the nerves to the abdomen and to the abdominal contents and the pelvic region. So once you know what the presenting problem is, I already know roughly where I'm going to be looking and feeling, and I can then put that information together and then start treating those areas so that you get the very best recovery, because you're treating pretty much everything that could be contributing to that problem. And then giving advice and exercises as well. That's also really important, that the patient understands how to manage their complaint. So they don't always need to be coming back for treatment, because they understand if they keep the lower back in better condition so that they maintain the improvements made, so reducing the inflammation and understanding how to keep that under control. Same with the neck, with the vagus nerve, exercises to do around the neck. It just means that the interval in between treatments can also increase, or that you may not even need to see them again, because they're actually managing their own condition.
Michelle,
Sometimes,
oh, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, like if the lower back is inflamed and that person isn't exercising enough and they have a sedentary job, then it's a case of, if they aren't keeping their lower back mobile, then it's not going to help the monthly cycle, because it just contributes each month, because they're not actually addressing part of the root cause.
How often, you mentioned removing blockages, but how often are these blockages psychological, emotional, and is that still within the domain of what you would address, or does it reach a point would you send someone elsewhere to address more psychological issues, or is that something you would meet head on?
So the way I work now is I meet that head on, because now I work a lot with anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and suicide. And I'm working with those patients, though, on a physical level and also a spiritual level too. I do recognize when patients need cognitive support. I take into account when someone needs a referral, but a lot of the patients who come to me for the treatment for these conditions, they've already been under psychiatry for 8 to 10 years. So they're already on medication as well. It's not typical, though, for osteopathy to help within that area, and that's because of the regulator restricted scope of practice for osteopaths. So that isn't to say then that there would be many people like myself working with anxiety, depression, and suicide, because it's just the way I'm currently finding myself working and getting really good results in that.
That's amazing. So really, the only blockage, to use the word, preventing an osteopath from covering that realm of health is the red tape involved.
Yes.
Got it.
Michelle, is osteopathy and atheism incompatible?
No.
Can you expound on that?
Yeah. So you don't have to have any belief in God or have any spiritual connection for you to get better.
Okay.
And it's not a necessary part of the treatment. And I would say the very majority of osteopaths anyway, they wouldn't work in that spiritual context anyway. It's not part of the training particularly. So it's probably just more the way that I've developed my practice and the way that I'm currently working, and also because of me not being regulated. So I am free to practice osteopathy and osteopathy techniques in the way that they were meant, which is the ability to be able to heal all disease and all illness, not just a bad back and a headache and a joint pain. So I would say a lot of patients that have treatment would not believe in anything higher than themselves. And a lot of patients as well are extremely skeptical, because when I'm using the cranial-sacral technique, it's very fine movement, and it may feel like not a lot is happening. And so a lot of people over the years have said, they didn't believe what I was doing was going to help them, because I just moved their head side to side, and I expected them to get better, and I just didn't do very much. But when they come back, that's when they say, wow, what did you do? I felt awful for a week, or I felt just euphoria for a week. I'm not sure how you did that or what you did, but obviously you did do something, which was huge, because I could feel the effects. But there is no way that I believed you could help me, because you didn't do very much. So even the non-believers of just structural osteopathy, that it could help them get better, they're converted because the results speak for themselves, whether you've got a belief or not in something higher.
Is it much more difficult to treat someone who doesn't even have the belief in their own body and in their body's ability to heal? Like, if someone comes in and they have a conviction that this is their life now, this is their suffering, or have an identity with their condition or disease, how difficult does that make it to treat that person? And do you treat that aspect of their mindset?
Yeah, so I also treat babies and children, and I treat children that would be on the autistic spectrum. And I treat from 1 day old. So there are many patients that you haven't got their mind, you haven't got the placebo effect involved there. You haven't got their mind because they're so young. They have not got a clue what you're doing. Yeah. They have no belief in what you're doing either, because they're too young, or that they have actually an issue because they've got something like Asperger's or autism. And maybe they don't actually even really want the treatment because they'd rather not be lying on the couch with my hands on their head. So they'd rather be doing something else. And they still get better. So, yeah, so there's the other question that you said about whether to address someone's mindset. So there are a lot of patients that I address the mindset with. I would probably say the majority of them, because if you've got a positive mindset and you can apply that, then I think that you would get better quicker and get better results. But I've been proven wrong with that as well, because patients won't necessarily do the homework that I may have set them. I say it's homework, but I encourage them to perhaps change their mindset by practicing declarations, affirmations, even saying a prayer. But I explain it in such a way that they don't have to have belief in a higher power, but just to use the words, because the words carry a vibration of energy. And we know that words play a huge part on the reactions in the body. And I give examples of that so they can understand that if they think in a different way, then their body then will respond in a different way too. Because our emotions create our feelings, and our feelings create our actions. So if we can address the mind and apply that in a really positive way, then the likelihood is that they can have more control over the symptoms that they're experiencing, and they feel like they've got more responsibility and they can take better action, and then they actually see the result because they start feeling better. So many people say that they do feel a lot better because they are practicing the declarations or the affirmations that we've discussed. And it's just a very positive mindset. And in my consultations and treatments, it's very rare for me to be talking about the weather or whatever's local. It's a case of I make sure that as much value in that appointment time I deliver, and I over deliver, because I want to bring everything I can think of to be able to support that patient's healing journey, which doesn't involve talking about the weather. It needs to be something that's really nourishing. So the whole consultation, usually I'm finding ways to address the mindset. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think some of the answer to this question may be obvious, but it was a question that I asked in my head immediately upon first being introduced to the concept of osteopathy. What makes an osteopath different from a chiropractor or similar?
So I get asked this question a lot, and I would say that we're like two branches of the same tree. Osteopaths were around before chiropractors by about 20 years. So chiropractic is a branch of osteopathy. Chiropractors as well as osteopaths, again, will have a big variety in how that chiropractor practices. So you could have a chiropractor that practices similar to an osteopath and vice versa. So there can be a huge overlap. The main difference is, I would say, that the chiropractor tends to mainly focus on the spine and spinal alignment. So they may treat a knee issue or an ankle issue, but they would mainly focus on the spine as opposed to looking at the knee and the ankle. Whereas people that practice osteopathy would then look at the knee and look at the ankle as well as the spine. So they say that osteopathy is more holistic. The other difference would be the cranial-sacral approach. So I don't think cranial-sacral techniques are taught to chiropractors, whereas osteopaths have 2 years undergraduate of learning how to use the cranial-sacral approach to treatment. So I would say that's probably quite a big difference as well. But I've worked in Worcester for 27 years, and over the road is an osteopath. And you wouldn't think that well, I'm not an osteopath right now. I need to point that out, but let's say I was an osteopath for 24 years. And in the 24 years, we were not any competition whatsoever because we were like chalk and cheese. So his patients wouldn't have wanted to come to me, and my patients would not have wanted to go to him, which actually was really healthy because we were working, 4 or 5 doors away from each other. and no competition whatsoever.
Mm.
And I think the same is with chiropractors as well. You would, within the chiropractic profession, you would have like chalk and cheese as well. So it's a difficult question to answer, but that's my summary.
I appreciate that. Well, let's take a minute, if you will, to explore cranial-sacral and educate the listener a little bit more on what that is.
So cranial-sacral is a technique that we're taught at undergraduate level, but most people drop the technique after they graduate. It's very difficult to feel the rhythm. It's a rhythm which is the cerebrospinal fluid flowing through the nervous system. And it's said to flow 8 to 10 times a minute. It's around the entire nervous system. So you could place your hands on the body and be able to feel that rhythm. But it's also the rhythm of the meninges, the attachments around the brain, the cranial bones, the pelvis, and the sacrum. Because the spinal cord, once it exits the cranial base, it free flows down to the sacrum and then attaches. It's got a fulcrum point there at the sacrum. So that's another part of the system that we access. So at the end of your training of 4 years, it's still really difficult to palpate it, and then let alone know what to do with it, and then let alone know how to use it to be able to bring about healing in someone's body. So most people drop it because it's easier to use the other techniques you've been taught, which would be the manipulating, the articulating, the stretching, the muscle energy techniques, more mechanical, which also I think would be the less spiritual side. So I would say the cranial sacral work then is working within the energy also of the body. And maybe it brings in more the spiritual side, more of the connection with a higher energy. Because some people also would call it the Christ oil, the sacred secretion. And I started to use it once I graduated, and then I attended another course, which was like every day for 10 days. And at the end of that, I could just about feel something. And then I was really intrigued by it because I was finding it so difficult. So because I was so intrigued, and I'm competitive, and so I didn't want to be defeated by this, and I really needed to get to the bottom of it and really feel it. So I would use it on every single patient that came to me, even for 5-10 minutes of every appointment. I would allow that time to put my hands on and feel that rhythm within that patient's body. And then I started to get results, and patients would say how much better they felt. They were sleeping better. They had more energy. They were feeling less stressed. They were feeling less anxious. They were getting on better with people around them. And I thought, wow, this is actually working. This is amazing. So it was then encouraging, because then I would carry on using it. And then I was getting more confident in using it. And because it requires a lot of dedication and a lot of time, I think you only continue to use that technique if you can be bothered to, because it is easier just to click or to stretch or to massage something. I think maybe also because of I was raised Catholic, raised through the church, and faith was a part of my way of life. And maybe that was also part of why I was intrigued by it, and I just wanted to use it more. Not that I had that knowledge at the time. I didn't realize there was any kind of spiritual connection at that time. But there must have been something that was driving me to continue to use it. And now I use it on every patient. It's just, that's the way I work. I use it on everyone because I use it. I might not use it to treat the patient with that technique, but I will use it because I can get an idea of their energy. I can tell quite a lot when I put my hands on someone by using that technique. So, but particularly from an energy perspective, so I can tell if they're fatigued. I can tell if they've got chronic pain. I can tell if they're suffering just by putting my hands on their head. So I find it useful anyway, whether there's a problem there or not. I can just use it as part of my diagnostic set and use it if I need to.
Yeah.
but it's this subtle rhythm that's present within the tissues of the body. And then we're able to, once you palpate it, you're then able to manipulate it or guide it. You try and like shift it. So with intention, with the thought of intention, also with the intention using my hands, we're able to assist it to be able to realign the system. So if I felt like a blockage or a restriction or a strain pattern, and I know, I recognize that that's not how it should be, I try to assist the body to then correct it itself. And within a treatment session, it corrects. So mostly before the person goes out of the treatment room, they're already in that state where their body feels like 100% released. They don't have the blockages, the restrictions, the strain patterns. All of it's been able to realign itself within that central nervous system using the cranial-sacral approach.
So it's an adjustment of the subtle energies in a sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's also measurable.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's measurable. So it's not like it's an energy within the body, within the fluid of the body, within the tissues, which is measurable from each appointment. So it's not something that's out there, it's something that's actually inside that other people can assess as well. So you could feel this, if someone's trained in that way and they work similarly, then they would also be able to tell you what they felt in that body, and you can both measure it from session to session. It can be measured, which is then how I know if that person needs another treatment, or if they only need 2 treatments and I can discharge them, or actually they need 4 treatments because we haven't got to the point where the body is maintaining its own alignment and its own rhythm, which is to support health. Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable. You mentioned you no longer call yourself an osteopath. Is there something that you do define yourself as, or do you not like to pigeonhole yourself like that?
No, I've been struck off the register. Yeah, that's a big story in itself. So I am not allowed to call myself an osteopath, and I don't call myself an osteopath. I use osteopathic techniques because my degree is in osteopathy, and I graduated in 1997, and I was awarded that degree by Princess Anne. And I am no longer enabled to call myself an osteopath because the word osteopath is protected by law. So there is an Act of Parliament, which means then that you have to be registered with the General Osteopathic Council in order to use that title. So, I just practice under a different title now.
Are you able to?
Why I was struck off. We can talk about that briefly.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that story. I think we would love to hear it.
So, the General Osteopathic Council have reduced the scope of practice for osteopaths, so much so that it doesn't resemble what osteopathy is about. And it becomes so limiting. And for me, it was a case of, how can I keep on side of the regulator, and how can I serve the patient to the best of my ability, and so that they can heal? And the two don't go together. So the General Osteopathic Council, I think they are an agent for Big Pharma. So they protect the interests of big pharmaceutical industry. That means that they have to restrict the number of osteopaths that are practicing as osteopaths in the country. Because if we were allowed to be able to treat all disease and all illness, then we would take money from Big Pharma. Because ultimately, that's what we do. We're trained to help people to heal. And so we help people come off medications because we resolve the issue that they've got, because we address the root cause of their problem. And so the General Osteopathic Council stipulate that if you're registered as an osteopath, you can only treat a list of conditions, which is, let's say, in the region of 12 things that you say that you can treat. You are not allowed to treat or to say that you can treat anything outside of that list. And that list, as you can imagine, is mechanical, structural, back pain, headache, joint pain, sciatica, just a list such as these conditions. And it doesn't include things like colic and reflux and autism or any type of learning difficulty, anxiety, depression, suicide. So, or yeah, to do with the digestive system, they would say that you were only allowed to say certain words, and that other words would be banned, and that you would face a fitness to practice investigation against you if you were caught saying that you could treat these conditions. They would say that it's because it's not proven. So if it's not scientifically proven, then you can't say that you can help that condition. And in 2016, I received a letter of complaint by someone. We don't know who, although we do know who, because there's this group called the Good Thinking Society. And they would have brought a complaint against my advertising in 2016. So I was threatened in 2016 with a fitness to practice case against me, so that my title would be removed unless I complied. And I had to remove 75 testimonials from my website in 2016, and all of them were censored. So much so that I was left with one sentence rather than half a page. And these were genuine, real patients that were reporting improvement from the osteopathy treatment that I had been delivered to them. But they were all censored. And so in 2016, I had a battle with myself as to what I should do, because it didn't feel right. It felt wrong to restrict my scope of practice, to deceive the public, and to lie, in essence, to keep my title. But my title, I was attached to it. The word osteopath, that was my title. I'd graduated in 1997. My parents had paid for my education. It wasn't, you didn't get a grant to study osteopathy. So it was a lot of money. It was a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I'd also helped the profession. So I was also part of a number of different projects to help the profession grow. And every year I would do continuing professional development as well. This was 30 hours every year. And I'd committed a lot to the profession. And I was attached to this title, and I didn't feel like I could give it up. I was also afraid of, if I give up my title, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be able to do what I love doing. You know, I'm born to do this. I was 13 when I decided to be an osteopath. So it's all I've known. And at the age of 13, I even chose the right subjects to study at college, at school, first of all, GCSEs, and at college, to ensure that I could actually get into the college. So it was so important for me to do that. And so in 2016, I went along with it, and I censored all the testimonials, and it didn't feel right. It felt that I had duct tape across my lips every day in my clinic room. And I was afraid to say what I was actually doing. So I'd be afraid that there would be someone, I would get into trouble because someone would report me, that I would be saying that I could treat, for example, colic or reflux with a baby, with an infant. So I then had to try and find a different way of wording things. So that went on. And then in 2021, COVID, the pandemic. So this happened. And I started to learn about law. I started to learn about common law and my rights, my human rights. And I suddenly thought, wow, this is so wrong what I'm doing. And it's so wrong what the regulator is doing as well. And they have fraudulently taken the title of osteopath. They've made it their own, and they've just restricted how we can practice. And it's not right, it's not fair. So I took a claim against them. I used common law. So I just used my human rights, my natural born rights, and I used a commercial lien and an affidavit of truth, an affidavit of facts. And I used notices, and I sent 4 notices, and each one had been witnessed by 3 witnesses, and it had also been taken to a solicitor, and every page had been certified that it was the true copy. So it was I took it very seriously. And it was, you gave them, 2 weeks in between each notice to give them an opportunity to respond. And I was claiming damages. I was claiming that damages to the public, because they were actually harming the public, not actually protecting them, which is what they say they do. But no, they were actually harming them because they are withholding treatment, withholding healing, which we are capable of doing, but they were withholding that. So that's wrong. I published a book called Miracle Worker, and all 75 testimonials. All of the testimonials were in the book. So I reinstated the public voice because I knew that they couldn't take that off me. We were not allowed to have literature in our waiting area, in our treatment room, that said anything other than the list. So I thought around it, and I thought, right, well, there's no rule on publishing a book. I'm going to publish a book, and I'm going to publish all of the testimonials. So that's what I did. So I published the book, and then the claim was for the expense that it, took me 14 months to write this book, and I wouldn't have had to do that if I was allowed to practice freely, as our founder had wanted us to practice. So, and then just generally the damages because of reducing the scope of practice since 2016. Off the back of that, they didn't take it at all seriously. They didn't see it as a complaint or a claim. What they did is they said that I was mad. I was mentally unfit. And
Sorry, it's just incredible. Continue. Yeah.
So I was mentally unfit, and I had to undergo psychiatric assessment. So I had to release all of my medical records, all of them, to be able to prove that I was mentally sane and that I wouldn't be a threat and a harm to the public. So, as you can imagine, I said, no, I'm not prepared to do that. Now, my medical records are totally clean. I'm not on any medication. I actually don't have anything to hide. Not even one thing is on my medical record for me to hide. On principle alone, I would not do that because I brought the claim against them.
Yeah.
I have been in practice now for 27 years. Not one patient has complained against me. Not one. I've never had a complaint. I've never harmed anyone. There's never been any loss to anyone at my hands. So I had no reason to give them access to my medical records. And I certainly didn't have any reason to undergo a psychiatric assessment. So I declined, saying that it was abuse and using psychiatry against me as a form of abuse and a form of attack. But they pursued this line. And so there were 5 hearings over 3 years. I stood by myself. I wasn't represented because I was, quoted at over £10,000. Sorry, £100,000 for just one hearing, and I had 5 hearings. So you can imagine the cost would have been huge as well to be represented. But I soon realized that actually it was much better to stand as a woman on my own anyway and not be represented, because I wouldn't have been able to talk freely, and still they would have conducted the hearing in such a way which actually still would not have been my truth. So I decided I needed to stand on truth, stand on scripture, and knowing that I would be okay through that process. They could have wrapped the whole thing up by December 21. So I'd already undergone 3 hearings between October and December 21. And the date that they gave me to have the final hearing, or the final conclusion, was the 27th of December 21. They didn't meet that. And they then served me with a summons the following year, which was in September. And that was to convict me criminally because of using the word osteopath on my website and impersonating an osteopath, because at that point I was suspended. It was an interim suspension order until the hearings had proven that I was safe to the public. So they then took me to court, and they used that really in order to suspend me, because if they'd actually followed their own protocols, then it would have been done and dusted by December 21. But they knew they had nothing on me. they knew that they had nothing to be able to suspend me because I had done nothing wrong. So they used the criminal conviction then to be able to say, well, you're criminally convicted, so we can suspend you because you're a threat to the public. Mm. And the other thing about that is that the criminal conviction for impersonating an osteopath on my website, that's like a driving offense. It's cleared within 6 months, and it's a fine. It's like a driving offence fine. So it was £1,700, something like that, and then I appealed it, which was then another £1,700. But the procedures were not followed. The pre-court procedures weren't followed. The magistrates themselves didn't follow their own procedures either. There was no warning given to me. No, there should have been a warning because I could have changed my website if it was an oversight to use the word osteopath. I'd never, ever deceived anyone. Everybody knew that I'd been suspended, and I told everyone the truth right from the beginning. So to not deceive anyone. And that was hard. Every single inquiry that came in, I was honest with all of them and said, look, I'm suspended. They think that I'm mentally unfit and that you're unsafe in my hands. It wasn't good. But I did that because for my own integrity, my honesty. So everybody knew the situation. But they could have given me a warning that my website was breaching, and then it would have been easier just to change. But no, they needed this against me so that they could strike me off. So they struck me off, and they struck me off in, I think it was April or May this year. So I'm no longer able to use the word osteopath. I'm no longer able to get back onto the register, but not that I would choose to do that anyway. It was pretty much a resignation from me anyway in 2021 when I brought the case against them using the affidavit and commercial lien. That was pretty much, I'm resigning because I can't work this way. I can't be deceiving the public. You're restricting me, you're restricting the public from accessing this healing. It's wrong. And what you're doing to the profession is wrong. And it was just never as the founder would have intended it to be.
It's truly remarkable. Who did you study law under and with? Because we're pretty fascinated by this subject as well, and I've taken some courses. I haven't gotten to the point where I've issued a notice at all. I haven't taken action on the knowledge, but who did you study with?
I just did my own self-study. So I use many, many different groups, many different what you would say would be leaders within their field. I would say it was self-study, and then I purchased various books. But it's just really, I suppose, the basics of understanding what your rights are as a woman, or as a natural, as a woman, I would say. But of course, we live within the legal system, and so the two things just don't go together, because it's a commercial world. And so each of us is seen as a commercial entity. We're seen as a corporation. So it's just understanding, I suppose, the basics of that. But because the regulator work within the legal system, that's how they wouldn't recognize the documents I sent to them, even though they would have done, of course, because they're barristers. So they do know. They would say that they don't know, but of course they do know, because they know the deception from their training. They know they deceive. But of course they can pretend that they don't know.
Well, bravo for standing your ground. I mean, it sounds like for a lot of us, the many silver linings that have emerged through the last 4 years. It sounds like yours is a bright, shining silver lining, because you seem thriving and happy, and actually probably doing the best work of your life in your post-osteopath identity chapter.
Yeah, most certainly. And I've just opened a practice in Harley Street. So, I mean, that's just incredible. They attempted to ruin me over 3 years, and it was punishment. The entire 3 years was to punish me for having the audacity to take them on as a regulator. And, I'm in Harley Street now as a result of that. So,
wow.
Yeah, you can't get better than being in Harley Street delivering your healing.
Wow.
And I had to publish my second book as well, which is called Mental Clarity. Yeah.
Wow. And how do you bill yourself?
Sorry? How
how do you bill yourself? You know, how do you, I don't know, whatever the word is, advertise or promote your work without using the title that you devoted your life to?
Yeah, so right now I'm not finding that I need a title anyway, because the people that come to me are all word of mouth. It's all
Yeah.
personal recommendation.
Yeah.
I was on a podcast with James Dellingpole um, twice. I was on a podcast, and he has literally taken my work international. I have patients flying in now from
Wow.
Switzerland, from France, from Ireland, from Scotland, from every county in England. So they've heard about me because of the podcast, and now as a result, that's why I'm in Harley Street, because I have so many patients traveling from London. It actually made more sense for me to be in London to help them rather than them all coming up on the train and staying in a hotel. So I've taken my work to them, and then I get the benefit anyway of the Harley Street address, and
Wow.
to just
Well, and
have a different experience. So yes, I would say word of mouth, and I'm not really particularly using a title. I would just say I'm a facilitator in healing, a
yeah.
consultant, health and well-being, or yeah,
Well,
a
that also plays right into the in the common law knowledge that one shouldn't ever take a title other than a man or a woman. You know,
yeah, that's very true.
you're not a farmer. You're a
No,
man who at times plants seeds and harvests crops.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're a woman who at times lays her hands on someone's skull to get a reading of the subtle energies.
yes.
Michelle, this state of osteopathy in England due to the regulators, does this extend to osteopathy around the world? And the reason I ask is because I would want the audience member to know if they're interested in seeing an osteopath, how do they find one who hasn't been limited by such regulations?
This is what's really difficult, because you probably won't find them on the register, unfortunately, because thousands of us have resigned over the years, or we've been pushed out. So a lot of osteopaths they would have just resigned rather than actually being suspended or struck off.
Mhm.
Some of them have, but mostly I would say that they've resigned. So probably the best are not actually using the title osteopath. And that's really controversial to say, I know. And there'll be colleagues of mine that will not agree with that, with the comment I've just made. Um, but if you are registered as an osteopath with the regulator, you are going to be confined in some way, and you are not speaking your truth, and you're not delivering perhaps as fully as you could, as the founder would have wanted you to.
Mm.
But then for a lot of those osteopaths, they choose that because they want to work musculoskeletally, and they want the accreditation as well from the medical profession. You know, they want that, they like it. But there will be some that don't, and some that are practicing as the founder would have intended, but they're just doing it under the radar, and then they're managing to be able to get away with it.
And
So it's really difficult, because I think it probably just comes down to recommendation, um, rather than actually just looking at the register and looking at someone and finding, because their website also, their advertising material is going to have to comply with the Advertising Standards Agency. So you're not going to see the truth. You're not going to find the truth by looking for them. I think you only know the truth through a personal recommendation.
and this
I
and this sorry
trying.
this applies not just to England but anywhere you're
Uh,
looking for an osteopath.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Mostly you have to be registered with the General Osteopathic Council,
Okay.
even if you were practicing in, let's say, France
Hmm.
or Australia or New Zealand. And the General Osteopathic Council have that control over osteopaths around the globe. No, not every country, but a majority.
So what we really need is a new database of former osteopaths who are actually practicing it the way it's intended to be.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that is what's going on in the background.
it is.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good news. I
it
look
is happening.
I
Yes,
look
because
for
that's
yeah.
what's necessary.
It is.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. We want, because I think the goal, our goal is to bring this knowledge to the people, but then also for the audience to be able to connect, to find
yeah,
folks like you or similar to you. If they're going to do it, let's do it right.
Yes.
Um,
I'm looking for associates so that I can have a team working with me, because I am receiving so many requests and I can't fulfill them all because of there has been too much demand on me.
yeah.
So I am looking for a team to join me and to work in a similar way. So
Okay. Well, hopefully this will reach some folks who get in touch with you. Michelle, I also had a question before we start to wrap here, as we're coming up on the hour. You mentioned 75 testimonials that you were forced to remove from your website that then made it into the Miracle Worker book. Can you share some of the more memorable or notable testimonials?
yeah, so a child recently, so she's 3 and she's got cerebral palsy, so she's unable to walk and unable to talk, and feeding her would have to always be with distraction. So it'd have to use an iPad, which the parents detested, but it was the only way to get her to feed. And feeding her was taking 2.5 hours for each meal. And they brought her to see me because they'd heard about me on the Delling pod, and they were very aware of the cerebrospinal fluid. They'd researched it because they were also having stem cell therapy for their daughter, and they approached me to see if they could bring their daughter for a treatment. So they traveled a couple of hours, and I treated the child. I had so it was one treatment, and then they came for the second treatment the following week, and I hadn't had contact with them in between. So the first question was, "How have things been since I've seen you last time?" Really, not particularly expecting anything in particular, because I was just looking to help the body heal in some way, remove restriction, remove blockage, enable that body to heal. And the result was that the feeding their daughter for a mealtime had reduced to 10 minutes. So she went from 2.5 hours to 10 minutes. And so now they had all these hours available in the day, I think 4 hours it amounted to, that they could actually then play with their daughter, help her with her needs, and just have fun with her, because they weren't spending it at the dinner table just trying to get her to eat.
Mm.
So that was incredible. And like, that's just a miracle. How can you explain that with one treatment, maybe of 30 minutes? And that was a result from 2.5 hours down to 10 minutes. That was me working with the health of the brain. So just working with the cerebrospinal fluid to bring that lymphatic system into working of its own accord, rather than being blocked from birth.
Incredible.
Another amazing, recently, a 20-year-old who had been under psychiatric care for a very long time and even been hospitalized for it, and was making many attempts on her life. And I was the last hope, because they had exhausted the psychiatry and exhausted the medications as well. Nothing was helping. And the girl was hearing voices, and the voices were telling her to hurt herself. And they were just stuck at their wits' end what to do. And they heard about me, so they brought her to me. And with 2 treatments, with 2 treatments, and then the third treatment, the result of that 2 treatments was incredible. But now, 3 treatments later, she is happy. She is considering a university degree in September. She's been accepted on the course. She is not making any of those attempts. She's happy, and her life is totally turned around. And that was actually with 2 treatments. The turnaround was with 2, not the third one. The third one was actually her coming in and me actually visibly seeing her. Her hair was just, it was shiny, and her skin was radiant, and she just spoke for the whole session as well, which before she wasn't talking to me. She wasn't communicating with me. I didn't know what she was really thinking or feeling, and she didn't stop talking for the entire session. It was just amazing. And then an 11-year-old boy, and he was actually making attempts on his life, and he was 11. And again, the parents didn't know what to do. And they brought him for treatment. And again, he'd had 2 treatments as well. And he said to his mum that he was happy, he was feeling happy, he was happy. And he hadn't said that in over 5 years. He's only 11.
Wow.
So they're the 3 that I can think of that are incredible. Yeah. Others are like just chronic pain sufferers, that the pain that they were debilitated with, they just don't have that anymore in their back or their neck or their head, like migraines, headaches, neuralgia. Neuralgia isn't there, so not getting pain in their face when they're eating and talking. Just, yeah, some incredible results of treatment using the craniosacral technique.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is remarkable. Nothing more profound than a treatment that can pull someone back from the brink of
Yes.
self-destruction, self-annihilation. Well, I know based on the number, we could probably be here forever talking about your testimonials, but I'd rather encourage the listener to go out and get your book and read them all on their own time. And Michelle, as we're here on the hour, we don't want to take up all your time. Want to ask you the question that we ask all of our guests towards the end of every episode, and that is, what are your non-negotiables, the daily habits you do to tend to your terrain?
So I have a number of those. Every morning, the first thing I do is take a water-based probiotic. I always have to do that. And then I do coconut pulling for maybe about 20-25 minutes, reading the Bible, and exercise. They're the main things that every single day I would do those. I don't compromise. Every day I have to exercise. Every day I have to take the probiotic. And also the other thing is that every day I do inner voice, which is biofrequency healing. So I record my voice every morning and I get a new piece of music which helps balance my frequency. And they're my non-negotiables. That in itself, I think the music takes about 13 minutes or so. But I'm in a routine, so I do this every single morning. So that when I come to my clinic room, I can deliver 100% and I don't come to the clinic room with any issues at all myself. I've never had a sick day in 27 years. So I do look after my terrain so that I can completely deliver to every single patient. And whether you're patient number 12 or you're patient number 2, you will receive the same energy as what I started my day to when I finish. And that's because of the self-care of my terrain. Yeah.
Yeah, that is remarkable. Michelle, last question. Where can the listener learn more about you and your work?
So I have just started back onto Facebook and Instagram. I had actually come off it for 3 years with COVID because I was being censored all the time. But I've come back onto it, and it's Michelle Davies for Instagram and Facebook. I can be found there. And then my that's probably the easiest because then people can message me. And I have got a free gift for any of your listeners if they're interested. I can help with them with their workplace. So setting up so they can sit more comfortably and have more energy through the day. That's a free gift I'm offering. And also the brain care. So I've got a video that they can watch as well about what they can do to have better energy, have less anxiety, sleep better. So I can offer those if they're able to get in touch with me through Facebook or Instagram.
Okay. And then website?
Website is worcester-osteo.com.
And folks, we'll put the links to those in the show notes of the episode. Michelle Davies, thank you so much for joining us on the Terrain Theory podcast. We hope we can stay in touch with you and follow your journey.
Thank you so much as well. I really appreciate this podcast with you very, very much. So thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me this platform as well to reach more people and for enabling them to heal themselves too.
Hey everybody, it's the Afterparty in the Pineal Room with your co-hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Ben. Dr. Mike, how you doing?
Dr. Ben, I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Folks, we should clarify, this is the day after. We weren't able to do an after party immediately following our conversation with Michelle. So it's the day after. We've had a day of rest, changed our outfits, hopefully, taken a shower. Mike's got a smoothie. No surprise there. Eating on the microphone.
I even had not only did I have a shower, I had an epic sauna last night, which I haven't had in so long.
At Ashokan?
Ashokan has an incredible sauna. Have you ever been down there?
It's wood-fired, right?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Real nice.
I've seen it. I know it. I haven't done a sauna in there yet.
Yeah. Probably there's no time at the summer hoot for saunaing, but maybe the Terrain Theory Festival will have the sauna fired.
Yeah, I think you'd have to, right? That'd probably be a
big time
requirement.
Yeah, so I'm feeling good.
I bet you are. There's nothing like a sauna, is there?
Mm-mm. And I had it all to myself. I went down there a little earlier. Usually it's like when the programmed festivities have run their course, that's, when people head to the sauna for wind down at the end and tail end of the night. But I went in like right after dinner around 7:30, had the thing to myself, nice cold shower right outside, and went back and forth a couple times. So
Incredible.
it was beautiful. The weather's been incredible this week.
We've been lucky.
It's been a nice stretch.
Yeah, I'm hoping it holds. All the way through to the hoot, which is coming up.
I'm not even looking yet.
No. Who knows what they have planned for us, Michael?
It's funny. There was a hoot meeting yesterday with the Ashokan staff, who are wonderful people, but a mixed bunch in terms of, worldview, geopolitical outlook, rabbit hole awareness, whatever. And that very talking point came up, because I was looking at my weather app. I did look actually, and it said for this coming weekend, rain on Saturday, Sunday. Mine didn't go as far as the following weekend, which is the hoop, but people were saying there's rain Saturday, Sunday that weekend. And I made a little offhand comment. Isn't it funny how there's just rain perfectly on the weekends? And I think it's the bookkeeper who she was like, funny that, isn't it, Mike? And I was like, let's not get into it. Yeah, I know all about it. We had a little winking moment.
Yeah,
it was nice. Yeah. Everyone else had no idea what we were talking about. Maybe Ruthie pretended to ignore us.
Don't look up, right? Don't look up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's probably time to fire off some notices, isn't it?
Yeah, dude. That's what. Is it Cal Washington? That's his whole. That's his whole bag.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the name of his organization is. I really should join, but they're like a notice writing advisor consultation specifically for to combat geoengineering, vaccines, smart meters, 5G. There might be a fourth one as well.
Yeah,
but they're all about holding men and women accountable as individuals.
Yeah,
in that space.
And as we were discussing just before we pressed record, I was aware of elements of Michelle's story, specifically that she was no longer practicing as an osteopath. She was on the outs with the regulators, but I didn't know that she had stood up for herself and represented herself as a woman, and that was a delight to get into that, huh?
Yeah, it was a nice crossover because we dabble in that topic a little bit, but it's nice to see someone in the healing arts who's put that knowledge to the test.
And even though, as she said, like, even though maybe she didn't get the response that she hoped for, or and the end result, of course, is she's still not practicing as an osteopath, but she also claimed she never was going to, just because of the state of things.
Yeah.
But it's as if the very act of doing that empowered her.
Yes.
And has really set her up for success in this
Yes.
new journey that she's on.
Yeah, it catapulted her to a much better reality.
And I think that is the spiritual and energetic implications of those acts.
Yes.
You might not, quote unquote, win legally, but you've done something incredibly profound that 99.9% of the population in this realm have no idea what that means, how to do that.
You win spiritually, at least for this round.
You win spiritually. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. And you can, it's the proof is in the pudding. Look at where she is now.
Yeah.
She's
so inspiring.
She is thriving. She is thriving.
Yeah. David and Goliath. That's what she did.
That's right. The stone, the notice stones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just looking through my notes from yesterday, and I don't know how to quite articulate it, but it seems like, just to pivot to cranialsacral, which has been really fascinating to me for a very long time. I've known about it for a long time. And there is a lot of mystery surrounding it. It seems like she seemed to admit it as well. But it seems to me that the magic of that treatment is just acknowledging that it's real in the first place. Acknowledging that the cerebrospinal fluid is real.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's like stepping away from the gaslighting of all the, of the accusation that it's all woo woo,
Yeah.
and just having the conviction to be like, nope, it's real. I'm going to lay my hands on your head and we're going to take the pulse of your CSF fluid. That in and of itself is, I feel like, enough to affect change.
I would agree.
Right?
Yes. And then it has a journey and we're going to help it on its way.
Yeah. And that we're going to have an outside input, someone who's just very gently going to try to channel, a balancing force into another individual. I mean, is there anything more intimate, honestly, than laying your hands on someone's skull, like holding someone's head in your hands?
Mm-hmm.
It's so beautiful.
I agree.
Yeah.
And think about the act of giving someone a head massage.
Yeah.
How intimate and powerful that is. This is
What's
that,
interesting?
This is that, but like the gentle touch version.
Yeah, well, it's funny, gentle touch. Inspired by Tim's recent conversation in Move Like Human, I've been teaching at Ashokan all week, but we only live 10 minutes away, and the whole family is lodging there, like I usually do. But we've had a couple interviews this week, and I don't start teaching till 11, so I've just been coming home, and it's been these blissful mornings alone at the house. So I was getting deep into some Move Like Human, starting to work it into my morning routine. The weather's been gorgeous. I'm like out in the sun, naked, going through my routine, crawling around the yard, like on my hands and knees, and so good. But I started getting into like some lymph massage, like he does, right? And I think I was not very gentle around, but like behind my ears, and I don't know if I like opened some stuff up too aggressively or if I simply just bruised myself, but like I really got in a little too deep back there. So I did a little wake up call to like to just ease into some of this stuff and not necessarily be so dramatic with implementing everything. I was a little too aggressive.
It's very unlike you to just dive right into something
Yeah, it is,
and
isn't it?
not show any nuance or restraint. Were you shoving ghost pipe into your mouth as you were massaging your lips?
Yes, there are ghost pipes coming out of each nostril, actually. I threaded it right through my septum.
Incredible. Yeah. Hey, let's pause 1 sec, okay?
Yeah.
So you downloaded Tim's morning routine.
I just cruised through some Insta.
Okay.
Because he's so generous there, like we discussed. There's so much good stuff.
Very generous. Yeah, I guess to the listener out there, they should go to Tim Matz's website, and he's got a free morning routine. So you just drop your email in, he'll send you a link. It's like a 15-minute, barefoot out on the grass, and a lot of that, like that lymph massage. And I started incorporating that as well a couple of days ago.
Have you incorporated any it's not so much crawling, it's like because you're still on your feet, but you're on your hands and your feet just moving around the yard?
Yeah, like bear crawl on all fours.
Bear crawl, I guess you'd call it.
I have not.
So, that is something that in the Tom Cowan camp, I forget the gentleman's name, but he has a movement coach involved with their new biology clinic. Mm-hmm. And that was one thing that he recommended. And I started implementing that on long road trips, like when we're on tour, like we get off at a rest area and I just start doing the bear crawl around a rest area. My kids are like, "Dad, stop it!" Like it's the best. But that's a good one, and it's a nice reminder to get back because you just feel your back just like sort of like release, like pop, 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 pop. It's really good.
Yeah, and you don't. The best part is you're already bent over. You can just eat the ghost pipe right off the ground.
Exactly. Or anything else I happen to find.
That's right.
Yeah. You grazer, you.
So it's interesting after our chat with the Bigglesons.
Yes.
And their recommendation, I did their blood consultation, and then, their recommendation, I think they have this really for everyone, is to find an osteopath, and they recommend a specific certification of osteopath. But I've been to that osteopath now a few times. It was incredible. Mm-hmm. It was incredible just to be on the receiving end of that quote unquote treatment, let's call it. There was a very comprehensive like medical history questionnaire, and there's a fair amount of time in the first session talking about it, getting to the bottom of my medical history, so she could go in with her eyes open. And I definitely felt after the first couple sessions, I definitely felt great, but I did know pretty immediately in my conversations with her where she stood on some things. And I think I saw remnants of, the COVID like mask sort
Yes.
of recommendations and things like that.
Yes.
And it's hard for me
Yeah.
to give myself over to bring into my corner an ally, a coach, a health, whatever you want to call it, who's not quite on the same page there. Like, how can they truly be addressing things if they also believe that I'm at risk of disease from a pathogenic virus, or I should be wearing a mask to protect us from one another?
And maybe this is a stretch, but I feel like that's where the spiritual component comes in, that you want to have allies who you feel like are somehow spiritually aligned, because this does seem like a quote spiritual battle, and that it's to protect yourself from that propaganda, which feels like when push comes to shove, a spiritual assault.
Correct.
Yeah.
And even, take away the germ theory versus terrain theory
Yeah.
component, but now knowing that this osteopath may have her hands tied and can't even fully address all that she could address, or is intended to address, her
Yeah.
her practice is intended to address. So that database that Michelle was talking about, of folks who used to be osteopaths but now no longer practice or have stepped away from it, can't come fast enough. I
Yeah.
really want to know who in my area I can see. And I've seen like craniosacral workers.
Yeah.
I don't know if they face the same sort of regulation as osteopaths, but it's, again, like you, it was something I was aware of. I've never gone to one.
Yeah.
I think because that came at a time, my initial awareness of craniosacral came at a time when I looked at it and I thought, that's a little woo woo.
Yeah.
All like light touch chiropractic. That's just, you're not doing
Yeah.
anything. You're not manipulating
Yeah.
anything. Didn't believe in the body's ability to heal. And like, to me, hearing that as the foundation of osteopathy,
Yeah.
that the body heals itself, like right there, you're going fucking common ground.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is where we need to be starting from. And if we're not starting from that same place, I'm gonna have a hard time. I'm gonna have a hard time giving myself over to that person's hands.
Yeah, and as if we needed more proof of the damage that regulatory agencies have afflicted on the people. I mean, come on. It's not very holistic if you can't treat the whole person. My local chiropractor friend, Dr. Mark, who I've mentioned before, he is actively pursuing additional training. I don't even know so much the details. I know that he's interested in all sorts of modalities of energy work, but he's trying to shed his chiropractic label and certification so he can be more free to operate outside of those bounds. I don't know if that's actually public. I don't know if I should be sharing that, but it actually doesn't feel that controversial. He's just trying to reinvent himself so he can be less encumbered by the regulators and all the. There's a whole weird payment schedule, the way you have to bill your patients, it's not up to him to decide, things like that. And it's just very confining, not just energetically, but also financially. And I guess you could argue that those are kind of intertwined.
I would agree. Yeah. Well, good for him.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where that goes for him, because he's such a gentle, healing, well-meaning practitioner, and I've always seen him as just saddled with like the stress of having to operate this practice under someone else's rules.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what that yields.
Yeah. Less government, less regulations, no government.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the phrase you used with Michelle on her osteopathy?
Posteopathy.
Posteopathy.
Or was it postopathy?
No, posteopathy. Yeah, I'm a posteopath.
Posteopath.
Oh, it's wonderful.
There it is. Posteopath. It's written right down. It's underlined twice. Yeah, and it got me thinking too. What is she now? She's I forget exactly what words she used, but she's one who is a facilitator in healing, or a consultation in your healing journey.
Yeah.
A woman who consults with your healing journey. It doesn't have
Correct.
to be any more complicated than
Yes.
that.
A woman who at times
Yes.
consults with your healing journey.
Yes. Exactly. It sounds so goofy at one level to have to jump through these like these semantic hoops, but what is the legal system in the whole UCC but semantic hoops? That's what the game is.
Correct. We're identifying the bars of the cage and we're navigating
Yes.
them.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it, again, like so many people, it was trial by fire to have to like go up against the system and see how to parry those blows or dodge those arrows. And it sounds like she just went in full steam ahead.
Yeah.
Incredible story.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I left that conversation so inspired and wanting to read all of her books, and I'm like all in on Michelle, dude.
All in. And what was the name of the organization that like initially called her out? The Good Thinking Society?
Or they like the Good Thinking Group?
It was the Good Thinking Society. What world are we living in?
Yeah, I know.
It's so Orwellian.
It's so Orwellian. It's so crazy.
Someone needs to infiltrate that group.
Yeah. It's just like an army of Karens.
It's it's the most horrible thing.
Yeah. It's like we were just saying, I also have written in my notes here, the march of red tape. Like that's what government has become. Just as much red tape as they can sling.
Yeah. And it's just right around our necks. It's just slowly choking everyone.
There's so much red tape. Everything's red. You just can't even see any other color anymore.
Right.
You don't even see it anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. Osteopathy.
Well,
I really enjoyed her non-negotiables too.
Yeah. Yes. Remind me. I didn't write them down.
She had probiotics, which I thought was interesting.
Liquid form probiotics. I got it right here. Coconut pulling.
Coconut pulling, which comes up now and again.
Yep.
That's a morning routine for her, which is cool. I know a lot of people do that at night. That's something I haven't tried yet, but I think it's on my list.
Yep. Reading the Bible.
So cool.
And
exercise, and then the inner voice work.
Yes.
Recording her own voice with music, which I didn't quite know 100% what that meant. But then she offered to us some sort of, what would you describe that as with our voices?
So, okay. It's man, it's a great question. It's an inner voice scan and an inner voice audio. So I don't fully understand. I know the process is that we give her our height, weight, date of birth, a selfie, and then like a 15-second voice memo or voice recording of ourselves just talking. Some people just do the alphabet. And this technology like scans your voice and scans for certain notes that you use and finds the notes that might be out of balance, and then you are sent back some sort of track that you can listen to that like somehow balances you out. I don't fully understand what's happening yet, but I did send her what she needed, and
you did it already.
Yeah, she followed up with me on Instagram, and so I got it over to her. She did send me a document that kind of explains it a little bit, and I haven't received the audio track yet.
It sounds a little bit like an audio version of a Tom Palladino scalar treatment.
Perhaps that's what it, and that yes, that is what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. I've heard people on Crow 777 talk about this modality as well.
Yeah, and I'm not dubious at all. I'm go into it full like open mind, open heart, and actually with a lot of anticipation that it's going to do good, just because where we are, what we've been exposed to, and our growing understanding of the sound and frequency, and like how it all comes down to that. And the fact that it's kind of interpreting your own voice, like through your own voice. Where do you need some help? Where might you need some balancing? What's out of balance? Man, I'm all in.
Am I correct that they analyze your voice and then send back a musical sample that balances you in some way?
Yes, there's like musical notes that you can listen to in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or just as like continuous.
Yeah.
I'll know more. I wish to the listener, I'm sorry, I don't know more. I do believe that on Michelle's website, you can do this yourself, that she'll do this kind of reading and scan and send back to you something in return. And by the next after party, I will have my own scan and have a little bit of time. And Mike, I will make sure that you reach out to her through Instagram or email to follow up, so you get yours as well, because she did offer complimentary for both of us.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, as Nikola Tesla says, everything is frequency.
Yep. There it is. There it is. Well, folks, nothing you heard here should be taken as medical advice, because neither Mike nor I are medical experts. Remember that you are light, you are love. Don't get on the bad side of the good thinking society. You are your primary healthcare provider. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.